benefit from an ordinance like this. So then you take into consideration all of the residential concerns about it, and so it makes it very difficult for me to support something like this.
So I'll jump in, surprisingly. I have more statements than questions on this one. That will shock everyone. Just to be clear, and because I'm on that committee as well, and I was at that meeting where this was first brought forward, I want to make sure that people understand this is not some idea the city came up with. This was presented to them by a business, which, as Brad said, is very, very welcome. The comment was made that to make the city something it's not. That was not the intent, I don't believe, of the business that submitted it. I don't believe it was at all the intent of Brad or I or Councilwoman Munden, who was on that committee. We're simply doing our job to make sure that we listen to everybody, businesses, citizens, those outside of our city boundaries. And we pushed very hard to make sure that this came before a public hearing, because I know, maybe it's because I'm new, I don't know everything. I don't pretend to know what everyone's opinions are. Sorry. And so I pushed hard to make sure that we had a public hearing about it, to make sure that we are transparent. And so if people feel like it was a waste of money to send those things out, I'm sorry. We're going to err on the side of transparency as much as we can. So regarding this ordinance, the change ordinance, this is the ordinance. Perhaps the best thing that this request has brought up is how incredibly deficient our ordinance is. The fact that we don't have a decibel reading came up 2 or 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, when we first discussed this, and Councilwoman Munden brought that up, and it's a very good point. I don't know how it doesn't really matter at this point. The fact is that it doesn't, and to me that's potentially a larger issue, because as the ordinance reads, we could have potentially a hypersensitive citizen who is very sensitive to noise, all the way from a business who is all about noise, and everywhere in the middle. And unless we have a defined decibel level that is that everyone can agree on, that doesn't put the police in a difficult situation. Of course, that would require that the police understand how to take decibel readings, and that we have decibel reading ometers, because there's probably an ometer for that. There's actually probably an app for that as well. Okay, great. That way, I think that's the only way. I don't think this ordinance is fair to anybody. I don't think it's fair to businesses. I don't think it's fair to residents. And because we don't have a baseline way to measure what is a public nuisance. So what I also don't believe is that we necessarily need to hold this decision in order to formulate that. I think, I'm not sure what committee that resides with. Maybe it's us, Brad, I don't know. But I think that is a very natural next step, that we need to look at the ordinance as a whole to tidy that up and make sure that is good. Based on the feedback I've received, I've taken several phone calls from residents, some of them in this room, discussing this matter. I've received emails that most of the council's received. I've received additional emails. I've talked to people on the street. And, not this is a 100% democracy, but I don't know how I could possibly support changing this ordinance at this point in time, based on my own feelings, and more importantly, based on the feedback I've received both electronically and here tonight. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion, council?
So, show of hands, who showed up Saturday night to listen to the music at Fiddlesticks? What's that? For those of you who did not go downtown Saturday night to listen to the music, it was a 3-piece band. It was not loud that I could understand. It was not offensive to me. I talked to 2 neighbors of Carol Peterson who were outside. It didn't bother them. Knocked on 2 doors and nobody answered. Stranger in the neighborhood. So I would seem to think that, well, that would suggest that I would be for this ordinance. But I'm concerned that that 3-piece band could be a 5- or 6-piece band the next time, and they could. The band was facing the river, so it was casting most of its noise out into the across the river. So, but there's no restriction that says that they can't aim it in the other direction because they get more seats in or something. Anyway, so I'm very concerned that it could certainly be twice as loud as it was Saturday night, and it could be twice as offensive to even more people who haven't come here. I'm particularly impressed by the casino, who we don't govern, but they closed their shop at 10 o'clock, and that's a big venue. That's a lot of noise. And out of respect for them, I think the casino, thank you for doing what you do to a measure to keep things down. So I can't support this.
I do have some comments as well. I have two twin daughters that are in high school, and in our neighborhood, there's just, hundreds of children. And that's what our whole community is about, is family and children. And I can't imagine having music going until 11 p.m. I did call Chateau Saint Michel, and they do cut it off sometimes at 9:30, just to get the people out of there by 10. So I can't support it as well.
I don't know what is left to be said. I would second most of the comments made tonight as comments that I would have made myself on record. So I think that as a resident of downtown, there's not a whole lot of people left in the retail area at 10 o'clock at night also. So I'm not thinking that this is going to add to vibrancy or drive true economic benefit. So I am not going to support it.
Well, so as we said before, the border between those commercial and residential. Oh, sorry. As we said the last time, the border between what's residential and commercial downtown is a very thin gray line that we're approaching here. I have a neighbor who sets his car alarm off at 10:30 at night. I grumble. I have another neighbor whose son used to play the drums, and I would chuckle. So noise is in the eye of the listener. But having said that, I can't vote for something that could potentially put a band of any sort in front of a house for a family.
Thank you all. And by the way, we usually have Nick stop the drums at 10 o'clock. Well, there was a few questions asked, so you could perhaps provide some clarifying information before you.
Just technical comments not related to the policy points that the council members have made. First, there was a question about what's a form-based mixed-use district. And if you look at the draft ordinance, the language refers to areas that are zoned a certain way, and we, in the draft, referred to the names of those zoning districts. So one is the Ridge Neighborhood Center, the other is the historic downtown overlay area, and the third is the mixed-use form-based district. And if you look at the city's zoning map, all of those things are defined and they're shown on the map in a separate color. So we were trying to be precise in the wording so anybody could look at the governing document and see it. If folks have questions about things like that in draft ordinances in the future, I encourage them to call and ask what it means. We're trying to be, I didn't receive any questions about that, but we were trying to be precise rather than vague in that. The other point that was made addressed using the language public disturbance noise and defining that in a fairly subjective way as opposed to decibels. And there's an organization called the Municipal Research Services Center, which is funded by the legislature and provides general advice to cities and city councils. And their guidance on noise points out that there are two ways to do this, and one is with an objective decibel-based standard. The other is using a public disturbance type definition or a public nuisance definition, and there are pros and cons to both approaches. Decibels can sometimes be required to be measured on an average or hourly basis, and they don't properly account for spikes in noise that can be particularly disturbing. They don't take into account As Councilmember Holloway said, particularly sensitive sources. And if you ratchet a decibel level down low enough, you can have a setting where you're picking up the neighbor's car alarm, various things that people might not think as violating an ordinance, but they would, and that you'd have to apply it to everyone. So the public disturbance definition has been in the city code since 1986. And this ordinance was just intended to make an incremental adjustment to the hours and not take on a wholesale revamp of the ordinance, although the council could certainly ask us to be happy to look into that.
And also, I mean, if we have an inebriated individual downtown, I'm not expecting that the police hold while the breathalyzer comes down so we get a scientific measure. It is their judgment that that individual is inebriated, they can then remove them as appropriate. So I trust in the judgment of the police force and the enforcement they do. I don't want a noise issue ignored temporarily while the sound meter's found. I trust the judgment of the police to act appropriately.
Any further discussion or questions, council? All right. It's our, Mr. Hoffer.
Just one addition to the record, 11 emails and letters, written comment were forwarded to the city council, and those are added to the record.
Which may or may not include some of the folks that testified today, correct?
Yes, it's a mix of some of the oral testimony that we have.
Great, thank you, Mark. All right, it's our custom to provide for public comment prior to a final vote. It's not required by law, but it's been customary because the council wants to provide as many opportunities for public comment. However, given that there was a copious amount of the time dedicated to the public hearing, I'm not going to do that at this time. So, council, at this point, I would just ask all in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
The ordinance, amendment to the ordinance fails unanimously. All right, thank you. With that, we move on to reports. Parks and Public Works Committee, is there any report?
Other than the 4th of July went off well,
Community Development Committee,
No report.
Finance Administration Committee.
Actually, we have on the agenda, under the committee of the whole, a matter that came out of F&A, so I'll pull our comments to that. Other than that, I have no report.
Okay. Public safety, what committee did they just do? Okay, public safety, thank you.
Next meeting is on the 26th, which also coincides with the Chamber's mayor and one of our council member primaries is, they're hoping an open house for that or a forum for that. So we are going to be moving our meeting to that morning pending whether the chiefs can accommodate that schedule so that we can make sure that those that need to participate can participate. That's all I've got.
Right, now on to Committee of the Whole, we have Agenda Bill 17098, calendar for the Snoqualmie Heights Partner LLC notice to intent to annex 60-day statutory requirement for council action.
The city received a letter of intent from the Snoqualmie Heights Partners LLC as to contract purchaser of property within the Snoqualmie Hills West area of the urban growth area. The letter states the SHP is a contract purchaser and the underlying owner of property for initiating parties and inform the city of the initiating parties' intention to petition the city for annexation of the applicable state statute, RCW 35A 14.120. The letter indicates that consistent with statutory requirements, the initiating parties are the owners of at least 10% of the assessed value of property within the proposed annexation area. Per the statute, the city council is required to hold a meeting with the initiating parties and make a decision within 60 days of the filing of the notice of intention. The Community Development and Finance Committee, Finance and Administration Committee discussed options for scheduling meetings to allow for notice to the public, a presentation by the initiating parties, and comments by the public. The calendar reflects input from the council committee. Move to approve the calendar of the council for the Snoqualmie Heights Partners LLC, notice of intent to annex, and 60-day statutory requirement for council action. Can we pull up that calendar?
Open the calendar. Yeah, thank you.
Second.
I have motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 17-098 as stated by Councilmember James. Discussion, Council.
Well, by summary, let me just hit the high spot.
Why don't you zoom in one more quick? We don't need to look at June.
Actually, the letter was filed in June, we got 60 days from that date.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Bill.
This council meeting is on the 10th, and we are proposing a calendar that addresses the public and addresses the applicants, a reasonable opportunity to make a presentation, to offer public comment.
Can we scroll down, please? I think we covered off in June.
The next council meeting, we will have a presentation by the developer and a chance for public comment. On the 31st, not a regular council meeting, we're holding a special council meeting to offer more opportunities for public input. And on August 14th, we will take more public comment and hopefully make a decision. So that is the proposal, that is the calendar that we propose.
So, I'm sorry, can I just confirm those dates really quick, because I can't see.
It's just too-
7/14, 7/31, and 8/14.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 7/24.
I'm sorry,
7/31, and 8/14.
just a point of order. I will let you ask a clarifying question, but if you could please come to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I just couldn't see.
Only because you're not making comment, you're just asking a clarifying calendar question that I'm sure everybody's probably wondering.
So I just want to make sure that I have my dates correct. It's 7/24 where the developer comes in and does the presentation, and now that I'm standing closer, I can actually see this, so that's great.
It's on our website as well.
Well, sometimes I find some things aren't on the website. The new website is looking nice, though, I have to say that. And then, so people can comment on 7/24. People can also comment on 7/31, and people can comment on 8/14. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask a clarifying point? We, just statutorily speaking, I'm pretty sure that's a word, does the council have to make a decision by the 21st? We have to vote by the 21st, correct? And there is, short of a special meeting, that would have to come on the 14th.
Correct.
That's August referring to, just so everybody's clear. It's August 21st. And also, also for anybody who's interested, we will put a direct link on the home page of our website to that calendar. I'll make sure staff has it up there by tomorrow morning, if it's not up there already.
And so one other question is that, so as far as information and public comment goes, the city's already collecting written comment from the community. And Bob, that's going to be available on the website as well?
I'm going to defer to either Mark Hoffman or Bob Sturbeck. We can make it available, yes.
Okay. I thought that that was something we had discussed in the previous community development meeting last Monday, was that the written comment would be available for public consumption.
We'll ensure that any public comments that come in, that's council's preference, we'll get those loaded onto the website as well.
So the question would be, how often do we update that? So, I mean, those are going to be coming in over the next 4 weeks, so is it once a week you update them? Is it every
I would
day?
expect, I'm going to put staff in the spot, but I think we can put those up within 24 hours of receiving them. It shouldn't be an issue. It's just a matter of going to the front homepage and then reloading on the backside. It's not that difficult or complicated. We can do that.
I assume I assume that they will still be distributed to council as they come into our email box.
Absolutely. We get them the same time we would be posting them.
Well, just because we have a big audience, and I know that it's a kind of a complex process we go through. Would you talk about what the decision on the 14th or by the 21st that council has to make, and that part of the process, so that we're clear on what the decision that we are making on the 14th Would you put it in context of the whole annexation process?
Sure, it's just a very preliminary initial determination as to whether the city would accept or reject the annexation, so as to allow the proponents, if you accept it, to go on to the next step, which it would require them to collect the signatures of the owners of 60% of the assessed value of the annexation area, and then would require notice to the public and a public hearing. The things that you're doing now that are not required are required at the 60% stage. And then, even then, if the council accepted it, it would still have to be transmitted to the King County Boundary Review Board, and there's an opportunity for certain property owners or parties to invoke the Boundary Review Board's review. If that occurs, then there's a separate review process then, and a decision that's appealable to Superior Court. So this decision is really the very first an opportunity for the council to indicate whether they're interested at all, even if only preliminarily. And then, along with that, if the council were to say no, then there's no appeal, and that's the end of the matter. If the council were to say yes, it could also then indicate a couple of other things. One, whether to assign pre-annexation zoning to the property, and whether to require the owner of the property in the annexation area to accept a pro rata share of the city's existing bonded indebtedness that shows up on other city property owners' tax bills in February.
In the second piece, you talked about Bob, the zoning piece. Does that mean whether they're accepting what the applicant is proposing for the zoning, or can you clarify that?
It would be the council's determination. They could accept what was proposed, or they could assign some other.
So they could say yes, we'll entertain an annexation, they could say yes to the indebtedness, but they could say, on the second, one of those points, no, we're not sure if we accept the zoning, we'll have further discussions about that. It could be some combination of yes and no.
Correct.
Okay.
So, just further clarification, that box, I think that's important, the 6 of us sitting here, as well as the audience. So, as I stated in our meeting on July 3rd, I guess it was, a no vote would mean it's dead. Of course, they could reapply the next day if they wanted to, but that application is dead, correct?
Correct.
A yes vote at that point, I guess what I'm asking is how many more opportunities do we have to say no? Because the basis for that question is, I know there's a lot of people on Facebook that think everything's drawn up and parks are going away and everything's fixed as is, but I'm not convinced that's true. Part of me is very curious as to wanting to make sure that the next step of work is done. So if we were to vote yes on stage 1, which is, I'll call mini annexation approval, does that next phase where they, among other things, they have to get the 60% landowners, my understanding they already have, does it require additional environmental work? Does it require traffic studies? Does it require all this other data that before I feel like I can say no at all to the development? I feel like I need that information because that information will be valuable whether it's this developer or developer 5, 10, 20 years from now comes in. That type of information seems very valuable to me. Would that be required between phase 1 and annexation vote 1 and annexation vote 2?
Well, the environmental piece is not required because annexations are exempt from environmental review under the State Environmental Policy Act. And the reason for that is that annexation, you have to remember, is different than a development proposal. Annexation is just whether the property is within the city boundaries or in unincorporated King County. Just because the property's annexed doesn't mean there's approval of development at all or any specific development. The initiating parties here have talked about a concept, but bringing the property into the city would not authorize that concept. And if you think back to how the mill site came into the city, it came along with a development agreement that said property's coming in, but the property owners can only use it for the existing fish operation until they go through a detailed planning process with full environmental review. That's what's happening right now. 4 or 5 years later, after it came into the city, there's an environmental impact statement being prepared on a specific development proposal. So, to answer your first part of your question, no, there wouldn't necessarily have to be environmental review at the 60% stage. There are other criteria that.
Bob, real quick, sorry.
Sorry.
Can we require that, or can we specifically not require that?
You couldn't require super review unless there was a development proposal that was made
As part of an already annexed?
or to accompany the annexation, for example. But you could ask the initiating parties to enter into a development agreement in which restrictions would be placed on development or requirements for environmental review and so on. The second part of that answer to your question is that there are factors, statutory factors pertaining to annexation that typically need to be addressed in a notice of intent that if the council approved 60% would then get sent to the boundary review board. And some of those things pertain to boundaries and city services, and some, it's not environmental review per se, kind of getting into the weeds here, but it does get to some of the analysis that you're asking.
So am I going to learn anything new between the 10 and the 60?
Probably, I would think so.
Actually,
But it wouldn't be SEPA environmental review of a development proposal.
So along those lines, Sean, I'm hoping, I'm asking the city attorney and staff, we're asking the initiating parties to make a formal presentation 2 weeks from this evening. And they have hired experts, and they're gonna have to hustle to get as many things as they can get together for the meeting in 2 weeks. I hope that we will allow them, as well as the public, to also give us input on the 31st and on the 14th to assist us in helping to make a decision. So I guess I'm asking it on behalf of the initiating parties. Are they going to get more than one shot on the 24th to talk to us?
That's entirely council's purview. If you want to do that, yes, you can afford that. I would expect it, Frank. I'm not so sure we're going to have all of the information that staff's going to want as well by the 24th, as an example. You want to hear back from staff on some of those other issues by the 31st and or the 14th. You got to remember, we're not asking you to do anything, well, it's being suggested in your calendar that you won't be doing any deliberations or making a decision until at least August 14th. So there'll be 2 or 3 meetings in between, including August 14th, in which you can have that information presented by the initiating party and or staff, and obviously the public as well.
I think that would be a very good exercise when we have the mill site folks in, because as you go through the public comment, not only are we spending time doing our homework, but there are questions that the public comes up with. You know, we're 6 minds up here, we have a room full of folks, you just get that much more input, and somebody always thinks of the one question that we haven't thought of. So I would think that you would want to encourage having the developer here and allowing them to take the questions and respond to them at the next meeting.
So I'm encouraging us to be open with that.
The only comment to that, though, is at this stage, this is development intent. Sorry, I speak to me. At this stage, it is they're showing their intent. It's not binding until we get into the development agreement, to your question, Sean, a bit ago. But, you know, if at that stage, when we get into development, this agreement discussion, and it varies significantly from what we saw in the intent, wheels can come off the cart. But it's not entirely binding, and it's conceptual at this stage. So just everybody take it at that level. It's not, I'm still missing the swimming pool my developer told me was gonna be at the big city park. But again, intent and agreement, they're 2 different things, but they're related.
So Bob,
Yes, first part.
so so annexation is required for their project, which is why they're asking for annexation, right?
I don't know for certain what the county would allow.
Okay, so, okay, I understand, I'll retract that question, actually. So, On the annexation piece, is it possible to agree to annex the property in and then decline their development proposal?
It would depend how, again, on what kind of development agreement you negotiated, but theoretically, yes.
Okay.
If you think about the mill site, again, just for an analog, the development agreement said no further development until the council approves a master plan, commercial industrial site plan for the property. That's the application that's pending. After environmental review, it's going to come to the planning commission and then to this council, and the council could say yes, no, or yes, but only with conditions, or make changes.
So let me play that through then. So let's just, for hypothetical speaking, say we get to a point where the council agreed that annexing the property was a good idea, annexing it into the city was a good idea, but we did not eventually go along with the development plan that they were proposing. Are there liabilities to the city that come now because we've annexed property and no development has been approved?
Not if the decision's made.
So Christine says there are, but I'm going to let you answer.
I'll just say not if the decision's made with the appropriate legal advice.
And Anderson was
You know,
on the
okay.
thing that Council 101 is you never ask, if we make this, on a public record, if we make this decision, will we get sued? And then put it, that will be exhibit 1 in the
I
lawsuit.
did not say that.
Now, those are things we talk about in the executive session.
I'm just trying to understand our liabilities throughout, because we talk about 800 homes, whatever, right? But it may never get to that. It may get somewhere short of that, and if we incur liabilities and no revenue to help offset those liabilities, that's concerning for me. So I'm just trying to understand how far we can go and what comes in play, that's all.
The mayor is correct. If the council would like a detailed liability analysis, that's appropriate for an executive session.
Okay.
I think another way of looking at it is if you annex that property in, it has so many existing residential properties today, we have to provide city services to them now. And as we know, there's limitations to property taxes, so that's going to add to the burden on property taxes when we're trying to alleviate that burden. So there is a liability in the sense of the accounting liability. There is a cost to annexing it in without taking into consideration either the development or the existing use of those properties now.
That's my concern. You exact a cost and you have no revenue to support it. That was my question. Thank you.
Council, Ann Gigi, the legal representative for the applicant, has been patiently waiting. I know you want to make some comments, Ann, if you come aboard now about the calendar as well as protocols here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm Ann Gigi. I'm an attorney with Phyllis Park Martin Peterson. Our address is 999 3rd Avenue, Suite 4600, Seattle. And I'm here mainly tonight on behalf of the Snoqualmie Partners, Snoqualmie Heights Partners LLC, to thank council and the mayor for bringing forward this very thoughtful schedule of how to hold the public meeting on the proposed annexation for the Snoqualmie Heights West annexation area. We're pleased with the multiple meetings that provide a lot of opportunity for give and take between the applicant and the annexing initiating parties and the council, as well as to take public comment. We fully support taking public comment on this proposal. So we support the recommendation here, and Councilmember Jeans, we would fully support your notion that the initiating parties be able to respond to comments raised by the public as well as council members throughout those proceedings. In order to make the most of council's time during those public meetings, we're going to be sending out a series of briefings to council members that will address topics related to the annexation proposal. Those will include community benefits, project phasing, water, transportation, and those types of topics that relate to the annexation proposal and the proposal for the 800 active adult community.
And you plan on making all those documents available on your website too, so the public can access it?
Right, that is my next word. We will also make all of those briefings available at our website, which is snowheightsaac.com. And we'll put some of these out, so we encourage the public to pick them up and visit our website also and get as much information as you can about this proposal.
And could I get that, so we can make some copies right now, I'll staff make some copies.
Greg has got some, but
And Bob, I don't know if this is possible, but it might, again, just as in terms of transparency, if there's a way to provide a link from the city website? No?
That might be,
Within the public notice, can we do it?
there's a question about, can we link to
No, I'm
a
not talking about
private
it's technically
developer site? I know it's technically possible, I'm just not sure about the protocol for our firewall.
We should be able to.
Okay, we should be able to do it, that's the answer.
Thank you.
okay, so our thought in sending out these briefings is to make sure that council members have time to get fully acquainted with the proposal. And so you can think through the questions that you would have for us, questions that the public might have for us, so that we can have a full conversation about this. In addition, Bob Sturbank has already clearly instructed that this is just the very beginning of both the annexation and the approval process for the proposed annexation. We filed the notice of intent on June 22nd. That starts the 60-day clock to get through this first decision to authorize the initiating parties to circulate the petition to annex. So it is the very beginning of the process. And absolutely to Councilmember Sundwall's question, do you expect to learn more between the 60-day and the actual time when you would consider the petition to annex the property? Absolutely. We would really love to work with the city, partner with you. This is the period where you can really help shape the annexation proposal. We've come forward with the concept. We have some things that the initiating parties know that they need to get out of it from an economic aspect, but there's a lot that can also be shaped through this process. So that's what we would like to work through with the city, but we need to get through this first step in order to do that.
So question, Ann, can I ask you a question? Weird, I know. So the, what are you, so you said we're all gonna learn something new between phase 1 and phase 2, as I'll call it. I assume you're gonna tell us everything you know up through phase 1, at phase 1 point, right? What are you gonna know at phase 2 that you don't already know in phase 1?
So the steps that we foresee going through after phase 1 and moving into phase 2 is the city requires something called an annexation implementation plan. And this takes policies from the city's comprehensive plan and the zoning that we're proposing for the property. And you kind of start matching together the concept proposed and the city's policies to see what might this look like. Not at the level of submitting a development application, but at a level of trying to put together a more refined set of plans for the property as a whole. And that's what we would foresee going through that. We would also foresee, because it's important for the owners of this property to annex into the city, just as Councilmember Pruitt was saying, it's important for you to know what's going to happen there. They need to have some assurance of what they would be able to do on the property if they do annex into the city. So we would be anticipating that we would work through a pre-annexation agreement with the city, similar to what was done with the mill site, only I think the mill site went through with perhaps no annexation implementation plan in place. We would come through with not the full environmental impact statement, because that is a $1 million proposal to put that together, and the parties really need to know that they're going to come in to invest that kind of money. But there are a lot of studies that some we've already undertaken and will be related to you in the next 60 days. But other, further study can be done to kind of help that annexation implementation plan and the pre-annexation agreement and shape it. And we fully understand that there will be constraints on development until we get through further steps of planning once we come in.
Is there opportunity during that, crystallizing of your initial plan for the public to weigh in, or is that just something you're waiting for staff to weigh in on?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. I would say, yes, there are opportunities for public input all through this process.
And what would that process look like? Does that go to your website, contact us, or are there going to be more public presentations where you take feedback? How's that going to look?
Well, I would say for this notice of intent, probably the most efficient way to do that is mainly in these public forum, but we do have a place to send questions to our website, and we can respond to those, and we have an email address. So we'd be happy to take public comment and respond either via our website, or during the public meetings that we have with council. Then beyond that, as Bob mentioned, there are public hearings that are required on the annexation proposal itself. But again, we propose mixed-use zoning for the property, so what we're foreseeing after that is even once you get into the city, you can't develop until you have an approved mixed-use final plan. And that has to go through planning commission review and then is approved by the city council. That's a full sequence of public comment and input until you get to that point.
Thank you.
Which may take a couple of years.
Which we wouldn't see, you know, we've kind of put our schedule out that we wouldn't see getting through all of that until 2021. We wouldn't see, you know, if we got everything done, and then after that comes the, you know, subdivision approvals. You're looking at home building is in 2021 at the earliest. And we would do that, and that would, build out would be over phases that would go 5 to 9 years. Market conditions.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the other council members for Ann before she sits with?
Yeah, actually, not for Ann, actually for Jody, I'm not sure.
Ann, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure I read into the record the recommended motion. Did I read that?
Yes,
Just
sir.
to approve this.
You moved, it was seconded by Council.
Okay.
Any other discussion, council?
I just have a comment on it. You know, there's been there was some initial discussion about a recommendation in community development for this schedule. And I think it was fine-tuned following that in the FNA committee. And so there was initially the applicant had asked for, you know, a presentation in August, which would have kind of pressed the presentation and decision toward the very end. And there was also an idea that there may be a presentation at tonight's meeting. And so the prevailing thought was that that we would avoid both extremes of the 60-day window, so that we wouldn't be coming back from a 4th of July holiday week and starting with a presentation that people may not be privy to. And so this is part of how we ended up with the schedule, and I'm supportive of it. There's 3 stakeholders, I think, in this decision generally, which are the residents of the city of Snoqualmie, the homeowners in the proposed annexation area, and the applicant itself. And so I think this timeline gives all of them fair time to prepare. There were certain things that the applicant cannot do until the application was filed, and that was a prudent thing on the city's part to reserve city resources until the application was filed. And so so I think this gives a fair amount of time for everybody. It gives plenty of notice for the community to be engaged. But like Bob mentioned, the written submitted comments are going to be available on the city website. The applicant's website is up, and so as it sits today, there's already a fair amount of information being disseminated, and people are going to be able to come to the meeting on the 24th and actually have, you know, kind of a primer for this going forward. And so given that we have a 60-day window and it cannot be extended, I think what's been laid out here, just not from a scheduling standpoint, but the dissemination of information is going to give everybody who you know, has arguments for or against, or wants to speak of the benefits of the challenges of this, is going to